Good evening. How are you? Well, the sun's coming down low and I'm getting out late. And the temperature is 79, which is just fine. And the wind is 2 miles an hour and the moisture is at 30%. So that's what Thomas Jefferson told me about today. There seem to be advances in the stories, but nothing really dramatic today, in my opinion. You may disagree, but I have a variety of things that I'm curious about, and I didn't see much new about some of those things. But there are a couple of things that are interesting. Those of you who are gardeners out there, since we're taking a walk through the woods and on the roads, you might be concerned if you use Roundup, because a jury today found that it was responsible for lymphoma. Now, years ago, 15 years or so ago, I was visiting a horseman and his wife, also a horsewoman, and they had been out gardening, and they had covered their bushes in Roundup, and they had rashes all up and down their arms. And I said, "What are you using?" They're using Roundup. And so it's a dangerous product. Now, Holly has to be careful about her gardening. She's a master gardener. But that's because of her immunosuppression. And she has to beware of any infection. And if you garden in her condition anyhow, you can get a fungal, you can get an infection from the earth. And because she's immunosuppressed, what happens is infections lead to rejection. It's like you wake the body up and it knows there's an organ inside of you that wasn't there when you were born, and it puts the whole system on alert and it turns on itself. Okay, but that's, in any case, watch out for Roundup. The issue, it seems to me, these days that we're focusing on, logically and rightly so, among a whole variety of other ones, is the woman. This is the year of the woman. I mean that in a good way, because the woman gets to fight back, and it has a champion at the head of the Democratic ticket to do that. And it's interesting, there's another indicator that women are asserting themselves in a way that says, "I'm not going to take it anymore." And Elaine from Network. And I think of Nellie Forbush. I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. And that's those are statements of a certain sort that make sense in the context in which they arose. But one of the travails of modern thinking and experience is the kind of trilogy of science, magic, and religion. And I've always had the feeling that you start with magic or religion, and then you discover there are laws about it. Some among us get smart enough to explain it to others or just to use it. Einstein is a great example of a person who found laws and then wrote books that are accessible to anyone. And his genius was finding the relationship that he could reduce to numbers and riding on the shoulders of other scientists that look for frames of reference, which is how his notions of relativity came back. But returning to first principles, if science increases and logic increases and emotion is reduced and certainty is increased, do you need magic or religion? Well, magic can be entertaining, but if you think it's something else, it can be quite devastating. And religion, the thing that should shock most people, even true believers, is the great difference between what the Scripture says and what people do. And in that sense, I don't know that the Sermon on the Mount meant to apply to women or slaves or a whole variety of people. But I do know that Jesus said, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And you won't be in the kingdom of God. Even then, they had writers. Of course, it took 90 years before the 4 Gospels were readily circulated, because there are a lot of other Gospels that didn't say what they wanted people to hear or know. Okay, so this is a long way around the barn to say women are tired and are now resisting their repression in religion. And they're doing so in many other ways. And so they're stepping back from it and leaving the religion. And they're not appreciated for being smart and being right and being persons. And so that's what happens over time. And with or without formal education, we have plenty of people, women, men who agree with the women, who see how important this is. So I think that with Kamala Harris, this is the year of the woman. And one of the things that crystallizes our opposition, of course, is that we had the Dobbs decision overturning 50 years of law that provided for a constitutional right. So that's pretty astonishing. But you see, there's a level above this. Now, I'm not denigrating what the war on the lowest level is, but on the highest level, what we're talking about is freedom. And I'm not limiting to the freedom that relates to the right of choice, the right to be let alone, and so forth. What I'm saying is that there's an effort to deny to women freedom, make them spend their time fighting for the rights that they had, compromising their ability to get along because of their prohibitions against abortion or moving around the country or using medicines and so forth. And it doesn't end with women. We have it with blacks. We have it with the aged. We have it with a whole group of people, though we're considered leaders in civil rights and civil liberties. So it says a lot to us. And we'll be trying to figure out for months and years from now what wave, what blue wave, what independent wave of rights and liberties Kamala walked into when she became our lead nominee. I got company over here. I got a horse that came out to see me. Look at this guy. Hi. Say hello to my friends. Oh, you're a beauty. So, going back, I don't know if that's a mare, by the way. The confluence of circumstances have brought us to a point where the need is great, the reason is plain, the people are alert and understand it. It's been going on since Alito committed the crime of being a hack politician instead of a justice of the Supreme Court, recognizing a long-time precedent of the right of a woman to be let alone. So we have that. So what is the latest sign? And this is what's so much fun. Kamala Harris is on the front page of Time magazine. Now, this drives the Orange Menace absolutely mad. And it was revealed on Musk's incompetently run production to interview Trump that when they got the broadcast, if that's what it was, going, it drove Trump crazy how attractive she appeared on the cover, and I think how smart she is. He is the prototype for a sexist, misogynistic bigot. You know, and we've got everything going in the family of Harris and the second husband, second spouse, in that here you have, she is a person of color in two ways, has never kept a secret about it, never, quote, used it, just been those things, and dealt with the discrimination that came with those things. And so now they're pretending it's an asset in a country that has such amazing bigotry. And she's a woman smashing up against the invisible wall that's keeping women out of certain positions. And her husband is Jewish. a nation that has a fair amount of anti-Semitism. If this wasn't the civil rights sweepstakes, I don't know what is. And there's something wrong that any man should be upset that a woman is smart and independent and strong. These are enthusiastic characteristics. Not everyone has to be that way, but somebody running for the president seems to me is a pretty good indicator that this is a person who's ready for the job. So we have too much testosterone, it seems to me, when Trump speaks, because within a day or so of this nonsense with Musk, he's saying, what we should have overhead an iron dome to protect us from attackers. And we have two neighbors that I don't think would appreciate this kind of nonsense, and we don't need it. So it's not enough that he didn't finish the wall. Now he's going to put up a dome with holes in it, probably over those states that don't go for him if he were to possibly win. So this is the absurdity of our time. Now, there are a couple of stories going on right now about mild cognitive impairment, and this is manifest itself as a person who is living in the lower levels of purpose in life. And it's a relatively short period of time, but the manifestation of this, it seems to me, is the last several weeks. That Trump has lost his momentum. I'm good with that. He never should have had any, in my opinion. He's stolen everything he's gotten, even the attention that he gets. So he is what I would describe, with all apologies to Sartre, as a thoughtless absurdist. Now, Sartre's definition, as you may know, is almost that nothing that you do matters. Life doesn't matter. And, I'll give you the rest of it too. Can you imagine, if life doesn't matter, what is death about? Is it a pause or a full stop? And plainly, for Sartre, an existentialist, it was a full stop. Now, my view, having not been affected by the World War II, the way he was, and others, Camus and so forth, I didn't have that kind of depression or sadness, although I got a lot of the information about the war. But because of studying ethics and so forth, my view of life is that we live this grand opera. And what we choose to do is to mix into it, to do with this life whatever you can imagine you have a talent or appetite to do, but you do it by standards. You have a measure of how you do it. Trump's life is miserable, and if he's suffering mild cognitive impairment, it's a miracle it didn't happen when he was 15, because there's nothing in this guy's life. Hate, seizure, wealth, running over people, making fun of people, no empathy for anyone, lying all the time. What is the basis of who you are in that circumstances? He is, in a way, what Sartre is talking about, as he is an absurd human being. Totally absurd. And you would wonder why he doesn't spontaneously combust. There's so much heat and fire inside of him and hate. Why doesn't he just explode? And maybe he's going to have a silent explosion, which is what is going on now. Well, there are a couple of other thoughts that you might enjoy. One is that abortion rights is on the ballot in Missouri and Arizona. I don't know what the polls say. I do know there's a big fight on to reassure women that they have rights, and we have to win this election for everybody. But we say something to all discrimination when we fight for women. Because then we're saying we're fighting for women, we're fighting for the working men and women, we're fighting for those who need health care, we're fighting for children to get good food, we're fighting for children to be educated, we're fighting to rebuild our roads and highways, to provide public works so that people can have homes and be fed. What a sorry legacy it would be if the future wasn't a grand baton that we pass on to the next generation in this opera called life. That's what we should be doing. Now, we know about Trump's billions, which I'm sure are imaginary. I don't know what his real worth is. And he's always used debt to carry himself into the next plateau of undeserved fame and wealth. But the senators and congressmen had to file financial statements. And Vance, who wrote a book, I think it's Hillbilly Legacy? Forgive me. I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to buy it. And apparently my memory resists remembering it. But anyhow, he associates his development as a hillbilly in a way. Although, as Waltz has pointed out, he kind of runs away from it and disses those people and wrote a book that was very critical of him. So how much money is he getting? Well, he's worth somewhere between 4 and 11 million. So he has, and he's 40 years old. So he has as much interest in the travails of the people he wrote about in Hillbilly Legacy, if that's what it was, and every other segment of our population except the billionaires that have put him on this fast track to be vice president. And like the Greening principle, he's now proven he's exceeded his competence to do or be what he can be. And luckily the world is seeing it, and he's tied like an albatross around the neck of the Orange Menace. So that's what I got today, and we'll see what's going on tomorrow. Holly and I are going to Maryland, to Johns Hopkins, for tests. We do these to anticipate and be careful about, how much do you breathe, what's in your blood, stuff like that. People ask, has Holly recovered? And I want to thank you for the cards, letters, messages, thoughts, prayers for Holly, because knock on wood, we've been very careful what we do. And you don't recover from it because you're always doing things to protect yourself from infection and rejection. Because if you get into one of those traps, the outcome is difficult at best and predictable of a bad outcome at worst. So, and I'm working on cases, and I enjoy that fact. And I'm thinking, in a lifetime, you do count your blessings. But I have an Irish superstition. If something goes right today, I sort of brace myself for the balance of that equation. I'm sure you all do too. And when people are thinking that a certain people had wealth or exposure and so forth, that's all they need. But you subtract the comfort of a mostly healthy body or a healthy body. You subtract the happiness and love. You subtract the uncertainty of being employed or having income. And life becomes more difficult. In a bizarre way, I think of Ben Affleck and J-Lo. Now, I've never met her. She's from the Bronx, so am I, but we never met each other and we probably never will. But in a strange way, I feel sad they can't find happiness. And Ben Affleck was up on the Hill when I was working there, and he was entertaining a group by competing with them in push-ups. And I had known and heard that he was thinking of running for office someday. So I went over and I introduced myself, and he was very engaging, and I assume he still is. And we stepped outside on a balcony in between however these events were working. And we talked for a fair amount of time, maybe a half hour. He smoked a cigarette. We talked for a fair amount of time about what he wanted to do and hoped that he would change and so forth. And so it's that guy that I remember that I just got a taste of. And I know actors can be manipulative, and if he was, he did a good job on me. And you know, you see the marriages and blessings he's had and the partnership he's had with Matt Damon, and you say, wow, they buy a $60 million home or whatever it is, and they can sell it right away, but it doesn't matter because they can't find happiness. And I don't mean to make them an illustration of the part of life where you get socked in the face and you have to figure out how to deal with it afterwards. And attitude really matters, almost in anything, whether it be health, whether it be ambition, family, children, sports. If you have a good attitude, a lot good can happen to you. So I'm losing the light, and you're probably getting a peculiar picture as it appears on my screen. So until tomorrow, with any luck, I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.